All right, let's give it up for Jyoti. That's pretty cool. All right, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
This is great. Wow, so internet time. So when did this, it seems like months ago, when did this deal get announced?
On, I think on 16th.
The 16th,
Yes.
all right.
A few weeks now.
A few weeks
Been
now.
moving so fast, hard to track.
Yeah, well, congratulations.
Yeah.
So how does it, well, I want to talk about other things, just
Sure.
one thing on the acquisition, but because it is crazy. How does it feel? It's not like AppDynamics is a brand new company, right? The company's doing hundreds of millions in revenue, but how does it feel?
It's been kind of a crazy ride because it's been, we were on deep in the IPO path.
As
IPO
deep as you can get.
Yes, like 2 days before the IPO. Everything was tracking really well.
Yeah.
And there was excitement. This was the first tech IPO of the year and all that. And suddenly we took this deal and everything moved so fast. So that was kind of the roller coaster part of it.
Yeah.
But as a founder, there is always a bittersweet part of kind of selling your company.
It's a little bittersweet.
Yeah, it's like you have
right?
been doing it for 8-9 years, and now you sell it. So there is that part as well. Right?
Yeah. So there is a little bittersweet even now?
Yeah.
A little bittersweet. So let's go back. I want to talk about a couple things early in time. I want to go back. First, let's go back to the magic moment, and then I want to go back to how you got the company off the ground for fun. But AppDynamics, and actually give folks, sorry, I should step back. I'm a fan, but give folks 90 seconds on what the company does, because I should have started there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what AppDynamics does is builds application monitoring and intelligence. Everyone has apps. You all are probably building some kind of app, a website or a mobile app or some kind of software. And AppDynamics makes sure that if something goes wrong, you can troubleshoot and figure out what's wrong and optimize your apps.
So so you were at Wiley before that, and was Wiley your first big role?
I was at Wiley as an engineer and architect.
All right. So your life's been in APM, right? And so what was the white space that you saw?
Sure.
Why did you go for it?
I saw two white spaces. One was more of a technology white space. That
Yeah.
APM was there, people were building monitoring for apps. But the apps were going through this kind of a big transformation of just becoming more distributed. Like when you do a click, does it go to 2 or 3 servers, or does it go to 20, 30 different servers? And that was the transformation that was very obvious that's going to happen with cloud and DevOps and microservices and all that stuff. So to me, that was the technology white space. I knew that we would need a next generation of APM. There was also a business model white space. This was 2008, right? So
Yeah.
almost
Perfect time to do a startup, right?
Yes.
I mean, everyone was just throwing money all around. It was the easiest time, right? Yeah.
So, but if you look at every enterprise software category then,
Yeah.
it was going through that change on consumerization of enterprise software. Like CRM going from Siebel to Salesforce, and
Yep.
HRM going from PeopleSoft to Workday. But the enterprise infrastructure, like monitoring and logging and security, they were just starting to go through that. So I also saw the white space that we can do a business model disruption. We can bring that consumerization into this, for this kind of infrastructure software, make it easy, simple, make it and take simplicity as a competitive advantage.
Got it. So you saw that, but it took a few iterations to get it right? What did you get wrong in the beginning?
So you start with, I saw the white space, I knew the market was large, and I had a hypothesis on the solution, how I would solve it.
Yeah.
There were two things wrong in my hypothesis there. One, the first assumption that was wrong was, I thought if you want to build the next generation of APM, you have to build a closed loop system where, as a developer, you tell us that I want 1 second response time when someone does a checkout from shopping cart. And the system takes care of it automatically. You don't have to do anything like scale up, scale down, and provisioning of capacity and all those things.
Yeah.
It turned out that we were too early for that. The world wasn't ready for that. It's people wanted just monitoring and data to begin with, because going into advanced closed loop was much farther ahead. So that was the first pivot we do. If you look at now, the serverless movement and what Amazon, AWS, Lambda, and all is about that closed loop system that I was trying to do back then.
Yeah.
So that was the first pivot for us. The second one was more about really where do you store the data. So at that time, it's like if you would start a company and you were doing anything on-premise, you would look stupid. Everyone would be, why are you doing anything on-premise?
Yeah.
So that was our assumption as well. We were everything was SaaS, everything was in the cloud. And we're trying to go and talk to these large enterprises. And what we learned was that for business applications like accounting and finance and HR, they were starting to get comfortable putting data in the cloud. But for infrastructure software, where it's like monitoring and databases and logging and security, and they were not yet.
Yes.
And about 80% of the market wasn't willing to do, especially in enterprise, to put the data into
So you started
into
thinking
SaaS.
you could do Fortune 500 in SaaS, but you had to actually go on-prem to work with those
Yes.
systems. Yeah.
And we are one of the few companies, like normally people go from on-premise to SaaS as a vendor.
Or at least
We are
they
actually one of the
try.
very few companies who went from SaaS to on-prem
Yeah.
to go after that market.
And did those iterations, did they extend the timeline it took you to get it off the ground?
It did. So to get the product market fit, it took us about 15 months before we
15 months?
shipped the V1. The thing is, if you're going after an existing, APM was an existing market. If you're going after an existing market, your V1 has to be, at least on some dimension, significantly superior than incumbents.
Something has to be 10x better,
Yes.
right? One little piece.
If you're going after a brand new market, you can still start small. It's because it's better than nothing. So you go after. In our case, it was an existing market.
Yeah.
There were strong incumbents. So I didn't have an option. However long it took, I couldn't go out in the market unless something was 10x better.
Yeah. So, and then let's follow up on that. You've written a lot about yourself as a 20-something engineer that learned all this stuff, which I want to come back to.
Sure.
But so you get the product. How did you sort of learn about sales and customer success, and like, what were your learnings there? How did you figure out how to sell into the enterprise?
It's, and I've written a blog about this I consider building a startup is like a series of milestones, right? It's like you get funding, that's your first milestone. You get the product market fit to a reasonable shape, that's your second milestone. Then you figure out how to sell, that's your third milestone. You figure out how to scale sales, and then you scale customer success, all those kind of things, right? So when we were, to me it was clear that the enterprise spending is about 80% of the market. So there were numbers from Gartner and everyone that in our space, 80% of the market share is large enterprise and 20% is SMB.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like if I have to win one, it's better to win the 80% of the market share instead of the 20%. So I knew we have to go after large enterprise. And now it's like, how do you go and sell into large enterprise?
Yeah.
So as a first
Not like you'd sold yourself into large enterprise, right?
Yeah. So as a first-time entrepreneur, you go and the way I have learned is you go and study different companies, right?
Yeah.
So I started study how do you go and sell, right? So it's really, if you think of, there are two, the whole spectrum is one end is the traditional enterprise software selling, which is that you have like these field salespeople, and they're doing this 12 to 18-month sales cycles, and products that are hard to use, but they take like longer deployments and trials and all that. And you do like $1 million, $500,000 kind of deal. The other extreme is the very, where you have the product is freemium and very simple to use, and people do free trials themselves, self-service. You have inside sales at the most, and you go after SMB with that.
Yep.
Right? So initially, I was like, okay, I have to pick one of those. And if I go enterprise, I have to pick this extreme. And then when I started looking at companies who were trying to disrupt that thinking, I saw some interesting companies who were trying to merge the best of the two. And at that time, Splunk was one of the companies that I really thought was doing a really good job.
Yeah.
So we ended up building that kind of model, which is kind of the best of the two. We're still going after large enterprise, but we had a freemium product. People can download our product and in 5 minutes could get up and going. It was kind of a land and expand where we're inside sales who will sell for like 10K, 20K, 30K, and gets people started in like 30-day sales cycles. And then we had very strong field sales also, who will take those deals and expand into larger $500,000, $1 million deals, which you can't do without strong enterprise selling.
You can't.
So if you merge the two, you can still go after large enterprise, but in a very, very different way than the traditional model. And what I also did was I ended up hiring the head of sales from Splunk to come and build our sales force.
Sometimes that doesn't work.
Yeah, but it worked well for us.
It did work. Chasing the number one at the logo actually worked, right? Was it hard to recruit him?
Not that hard, because he was in the process of like getting out of there, so kind of the timing worked out in some way.
And what were a couple things he did that inflected the curve when you made the right hire?
So he was my first head of sales, so we were at zero revenue then. I had like $70,000.
You took him out of Splunk, doing hundreds of millions in revenue, to join a zero revenue? You're a magician. How exactly how do you do that?
So, Splunk wasn't as big at that time.
Okay, but 80 million.
But yeah, they were
50,
big.
I mean, it was an iconic company even then, wasn't it?
It took some selling.
It took some selling?
It took some selling, but
yeah.
it was
So
I really admired the model he built.
Sell your first, now, okay, then this is like contra to some best practices. Did he close your first customers or did you?
No. So I had 6 paying customers in enterprise before I started.
So you knew how to do it.
So I closed the first 6 myself.
And you said he can do 7 to 700.
Yep.
Got
and
it.
I hired him and say, hey, look, talk to these customers, see how happy they are,
Yeah.
and how we can, the first 6 customers. It's much easier to hire a head of sales once you have some paying customers. Otherwise, any good sales guy would would not come at that point.
No one good will come. Yeah, but still getting him that early from Splunk is it's a pretty good move, right? And did you raise your venture cap? You raised a round at that point, right?
Yes.
All right, so you had the capital.
I had the capital.
How much did you raise at first?
First round was $5.5 million.
$5.5 million. And you said you had to pitch like 140 VCs or something like that?
I think you did that.
I said I had to pitch 150 VCs once. How was it the first time?
It wasn't that bad, but I had to pitch 20 VCs.
20 VCs.
I had to pitch 20 VCs, and it's you learn through that process. Like is your pitch wrong? Is your idea wrong? Is your or you need more validation in the market, or you have to prove that you can build the technology or whatnot, right? So so it was hard, and it was 2008 also, so it wasn't like the best market.
Crazy time,
Yeah.
right? And what's as then a 20-something engineer doing your first company, since it's Money Day, what did you learn? What was the magic for fundraising? Like, when did you get better at it? What was the hack?
I think, as an engineer, I like to put like some kind of a rational framework around things, right? That, okay, what is the magic behind fundraising, what you just asked, right?
Yeah.
And to me, it really occurred that there's only 3 things I need to answer.
Yeah.
One is, if I'm raising money from the big VCs, which I wanted to raise a Series A,
Yeah.
I need to convince them that this could be a $1 billion company. It took me some time to learn that, because you would think like, if you have a company that's doing good business, it doesn't necessarily have to be $1 billion. But the VCs don't want to invest in it.
It's not intuitive at first.
Yeah, for them, it's like go big or go home. That's how the model works. So once that clicked to me that, if I need to get money from VCs, I need to convince them that this could be a $1 billion business.
Yeah.
The second
Did
thing,
you believe it before that it would be a $1 billion business, or was it part of your pitch?
I did believe in it, but I didn't, I didn't make a case for that.
Got it.
Because I didn't think that I would need to make a case for that.
Yeah.
So then, and it's like, you're a 20-something-year-old engineer, you go and pitch to VCs that this is going to be a $1 billion business. You are hesitant in the beginning, right? But I learned,
hesitant.
Yeah, and I was like, no, I need to make the case for it, because that's what they're looking for. And the case has to be, reasonable case, not just like, something you make up, right?
Yeah.
The second thing is that you have to show as much validation as you can. That it's VCs are always hesitant on when they say like, you're not ready, show me more traction or something, they just want validation from the market, customers, experts, someone. And the third thing I learned is that I need to show why me. Like, if you convince the VCs it's a $1 billion space opportunity,
Yeah.
you have shown the market validation, VCs still would ask you like, okay, why should I invest in you?
What was your social proof? Why
Yes,
you?
what's your social proof? What's your social proof? Do you have a technology advantage over someone? Do you have an expertise advantage over someone? And that's, so I also had to learn how to talk about that and how to create that proof in some way, right?
Yeah. So let's go back a little bit in time, because you've written about the H-1B process, and we've threaded a lot of these immigration topics today. And what did you write? It took you 7 years to become a founder because of it. So share that for folks that are only half familiar with the process.
Okay. So a lot of engineers from all over the world, engineers, scientists, come to US on H-1B visa. An H-1B visa allows you to work here for a company, but it's kind of crazy that it doesn't allow you to quit your job and start a company. And so I was here on H1. I wanted to start a company.
Yeah.
I wanted to be an entrepreneur. That's something I wanted to do. But you just can't do it, which doesn't make any sense. And the process of getting a green card could be anywhere from 5 years to 10 years, which is also equally ridiculous. Imagine someone coming from a top school in India, and they come and do a master's in MIT here, and now they have an idea to start a company, and they're not allowed to do it for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years.
Yeah.
That's wrong. So I've talked about how that needs reform. That's a screwed up system. It needs to
So
be
would you have left Wiley a lot earlier if you could have, or what's the process? Yeah.
I would have left Wiley many years earlier and
Got it.
and went after doing this.
Got it. So how long were you trying to be a founder? How long were you going through that process?
So I've been working in similar kind of areas, and I had a lot of many times you have this aha moments on, hey, there's a big white space here, there's a big opportunity here.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go after those opportunities. And I just couldn't because of the visa status, right?
Now I should know this.
Of,
I've been through the H-1B with a lot of my team. But remind me, so it's 7 years, and how do you get to then found AppDynamics? Remind me, what changes? I should know this.
So you get a green card.
Oh, yeah, appreciate
so
you.
Once you get a green card, you can do that.
Okay,
yes.
of course. Yeah, got it. Yeah, it's 7 years to become a founder.
Or to get a green card.
So
that's why I do think the strength of Silicon Valley is that it allows people from all over the world to come here and work with some of the best people in the world on in building companies and building great products and all of that.
That's the amazing part, right?
It doesn't make sense to make it harder because that is the competitive advantage that Silicon Valley has.
Yeah.
So that's why I talk about that we need to reform some of these the arcane kind of rules around this stuff.
Yeah. What do you think over the last better part of the decade, what is the competitive advantage of Silicon Valley today? Is it notwithstanding this horrible immigration drama, is it stronger than before? Is it weakened? What do you think? What do you see?
I think it remains very strong. It's the good thing is the startup activity and across the world has accelerated. And I see it almost everywhere in the world. I see in Europe, I see in Asia, everywhere, and even in US, outside of Silicon Valley, there are so many startup hubs that are starting to emerge.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean that Silicon Valley has kind of gone down on the startup activity. So I do think the startup activity has increased everywhere. The Silicon Valley advantage of that the venture capital ecosystem is very strong. The talent and immigration that is still very strong. That you have good talent coming here. And then you also have the experience and expertise and mentorship from other people. That's very strong framework. But also, I culturally, Silicon Valley has that it's okay to start a company and fail at it, and no one looks down on you. And that kind of the cultural aspect is very, very key. Everyone wants to try it at least, right?
Yeah. So so let's go. I want to dig into, because we've got a lot of folks here, the 20-something engineer. If you go back to your 20-something engineer self, any advice you'd give yourself to do better next time? Not that this was a pretty good outcome. What's your advice for next time? What are the things that you'd advise folks here to do better?
I think
to advise yourself.
For a 20-something engineer, the way I was, I think the way the advice I give to any founders who are in that stage is that you have to actively work on developing yourself. And I look at you have to develop yourself on 4 dimensions. One is the technology savvy. If you're doing a technology startup or you're in the world of tech, you have to be very technology savvy and you have to be good at it. Second is the business savvy, that you're not building technology or product for the sake of it. The end goal is to build a successful business around it if you want to be a successful founder. So you have to kind of learn that business savviness. The third is people savviness, that building a company, running a company, being a CEO is all about people. It's hiring, inspiring, managing, leading, all of that. So you have to be very savvy at that. The fourth thing I tell every technology founder is the sales savviness. The job of a CEO and the founder is selling all the time. You're selling to your employees to hire them. You're selling to your investors to raise money. You're selling to your customers. You're selling all the time. I was at a point where my wife would joke about someone could wake me up at 3 in the night and I would do my sales pitch like that, so you have to become good at selling and be very comfortable with. And selling sometimes sounds like a strange word, but you could call it inspiring. How would you inspire someone to join you as an investor, as an employee, as a customer, or on something? So you have to become very savvy about sales. So that's the advice I give to every founder, that you have to consciously work on developing yourself personally on all those 4 dimensions. The technology dimension is very natural. But the other things are, you have to work on it.
Selling as inspiring is a good hack to think about how to get comfortable with selling, right? It can be a tough transition for some. So one topic I've learned, so I founded a couple companies that grew quickly, but never anything close to AppDynamics. And what I've learned is, from companies I've been involved with, actually the faster you grow, the more things break and the less the rules work. So what did you learn trying to manage this hypergrowth? So you got the guy from Splunk, that helps, but how do you just manage growing that quickly?
So,
what was your revenue ramp? It's all in some S1 published, but it was pretty nuts, right?
Yeah, it was pretty fast. We grew from about, say, 40 employees to 700 employees in 4.5 years.
And what was the
Our revenue
ramp?
grew from, our sales bookings grew from $2 million to about close to about $300 million of annual bookings in that period, like in five-year period.
Yeah, it's almost mathematically impossible. Well, you got to do sales. You got to close the deal. You got to go get on a plane. You got to talk to people. It's at the edge of physics here, right? It's at the edge.
It is. So I think the thing I've learned about hypergrowth is that you want to get the right balance of how much detail you want to manage.
Yeah.
If you get the organization into like too much detail and planning, you just can't keep up with it. If you don't get into like any detail of planning, then everything will go in different directions and everything will crash. Yeah. And the key is to find the right balance. So what at AppDynamics I found that worked for us was we call the concept of guide rails. That we have to, and we will say like, okay, what are the minimum number of questions that everyone in the company should know the answer to, so that they are aligned and going in the same direction.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be that it's not too many. It's like only about 10 or 12 questions at any point, which is, and many times this will be like, who is the ideal user of our product?
Yeah.
Is the persona, is it a developer, is it a DevOps engineer, is it a operations engineer, say, for our kind of product? Because if our engineers are building product for a persona 1 and our sales is trying to sell to persona 2, things break.
People don't do that enough. The 10 to 12 points.
Yeah. So, but if you look at like, so what we used to do was every quarter we'll do I will do like a offsite of our management team.
Yeah.
So just me and my direct reports. We'll get into a room for about 4 or 5 hours. We'll say, okay, this is the list of questions we need to align ourselves on. And we will fight, we'll debate, we'll argue. We won't get out of the room until we get alignment on these. But once we get out of this room, we have answers written, like very short answers to these questions, 10 or 12. And after that, you do whatever. You figure out the details after that. And so you don't have to micromanage it, but those things every 3 months we align, and that worked very well for me.
And how did you distribute that to the company so that everyone knew the 10 to 12?
We'll talk about it in the all-hands meetings.
Yeah, no tests or quizzes or anything like that?
No, you repeat things many times, but no test, Maybe that's
you got them, as engineering gets further and further away from the end customers, that is a challenge, right? How do you've got to keep them connected to the end customers. And any learnings there, just when you brought it up? I always struggle with that. I made all my engineers do customer support. That was my hack, right? You had to do it once a quarter.
I think I totally agree with you. I used to call it like, you have to break the walls between engineers and customers. And the thing we would do is like, we would do this, we'll encourage our engineers to visit customers. So we had a rotation kind of model that, every quarter we'll do like these field trips. You go and visit a customer. We are sitting in San Francisco in Silicon Valley here, and most of our customers are like these large enterprises in Wall Street and insurance companies or like a retailer somewhere. And our engineers have never seen how they do things and how they operate.
Never seen it.
So many times it's like, what we found is like doing a phone call is not enough. You want to have them like at least once a year or maybe once in a lifetime, go and visit them and spend like a few hours and see how they look and how they operate and how their day looks like. It makes them so much aligned. So we would do those trips, and they would work out well.
And even as you scale, would you have every engineer do that, or was it optional or mandatory?
Initially,
I like the mandatory.
Initially, it used to be mandatory, but then as the organization grew, we made it a bit more optional.
Yeah. And what happened when they came back from those meetings? Was it somewhat transformational?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they, it's. I would also call it like, sometimes we had a concept called we call like innovation by embarrassment. Like if you go in front of a customer and you are kind of embarrassed about some feature in your product or something, you will come back and in a day or two you will just build it. You'll figure out a solution around that, right?
So did you make them pitch too? Did you make them do part of a presentation, or what did you force them to do in those meetings?
So they will go in those meetings and ask customer, hey, how do you use our product? What do you like about it? What do you don't like about it? And have a conversation there. Right? So, and then the customers will open up and ask questions about this, and I don't like this, and I don't, why do you don't do this way? And, if, with good engineers, if they couldn't explain why, hey, yes, you're right, it doesn't make sense, we should have done it this way, then they will come back to office and they will fix it. Yeah. Right?
So related to that, as you were at different phases of your scaling, how much time did you spend actually with customers?
I spend a lot of time with customers. So the way I managed my time as CEO was that I had this rule of 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. 1/3 time I'll spend on the product, with the engineers and on the product. Because I was a product-oriented CEO, and that was my strength, and if I wasn't spending time with product, that wasn't right. 1/3 time I'll spend with customers, visiting customers and spending time with customers. And 1/3 time I would call operating the business, which is VCs and board and managing the executives and hiring and things like that, right? So that was my rule of thumb, like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 over any week or month or.
And what did you literally plan it out, or is that at a gut level?
It was more at a gut level.
Gut level, right? 1/3.
It's not that every day you can do 1/3, 1/3, or even at every week you can do 1/3. Sometimes you're doing a fundraising and you may be doing 100% of your time on the third category.
It is hard.
For a week or two, right? And so things like that.
But most of us, I find when I talk to founders, they don't spend enough time with customers.
Yep.
Right?
No,
they close them, or they may spend time in sales, but then they don't spend enough time after the deal closed with customers. Yeah. So related to customers, just because you've written about it and you have the passion, so it sounds like you have a passion around NPS and measuring customer happiness. So what are the secrets there to customer happiness, or what have you learned around that?
I think what we learned at AppDynamics as the secret is that how do you define if the customer is happy?
Yeah.
And the way we ended up defining is if the customer has gotten the value that they thought they are paying for. If they had gotten the value that they thought they are paying for, they will be happy most likely and recommend to you. So how do we become systematic about it?
Yeah.
So when you're selling into large enterprise, almost all the time before the sale, you create some kind of ROI model or some kind of a business case that if you spend $100,000 with us, you're going to get $300,000 worth of return of your money in 3 years, something like that, right? But rarely any company goes back after the sale and proves that they delivered that ROI. So we adopted a process which was kind of unique at that time, that we would go after the sale, like 3 months after the sale and 6 months after the sale, and we'll sit with the buyer and say, okay, this was the ROI that we built together before the sale. Let's see how we're doing on it, and we'll fill out the spreadsheet.
Did you deliver what you claimed you were going to deliver to the customer?
And if we delivered what we claimed, customers were happy.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can't deliver what you claimed. Things happen, like it could be our fault, it could be customer's fault.
Yeah.
And then we would say, okay, if we didn't deliver or we are not tracking towards delivering that, let's build a plan together and go and make it a joint goal to get there. And customers always liked it, that we were holding ourselves accountable to delivering the value we promised.
Yeah.
So to me, that's been the secret of how do you get high NPS scores. It's if some way you can ensure that you delivered what you promised, customers will be.
So you go back at month 3 and month 6 and have an honest assessment of did we deliver what, right? And when you went back and some of those customers were angry because the sales guy said something that wasn't true or the product didn't work, when you went there, did you ever lose them? When you actually went there? Because I find you don't lose too many if you actually get out there and go through this, right? So no matter how angry they are.
Exactly, right? If you go and talk to them and say, hey, let's see if we did deliver the value or not. And I say, hey, you said we will give this value and we haven't got it. And we'll say, okay, let's see, can we remediate it? Can we fix it, right?
Yeah.
And if you have the conversation of that we are serious about remediating it, customers like that, right? You don't lose them if you're serious about it.
Yeah. And a niche question, but related to that, because it is interesting. So you segment your customers into this inside sales and the field group, right? How do you force rank priorities? Because there are conflicts. There's sales, there's engineering, maybe there's not a conflict, but the enterprise piece is bigger, right? So how do you manage those conflicts, if at all?
Well, so the model that we adopted was we were selling into enterprise. We were not selling into SMB unless like some opportunistic deal. But what we were doing was we're doing it by the deal size. So if the deal was less than $75,000, our inside sales will take the lead and run it. If the deal was more
even if it's IBM.
Even if it's IBM.
Even if it's IBM.
And if it was with some exceptions, like there will be some like accounts which will be exceptions sometimes.
Yeah. Google gets the better treatment.
Yes.
Yeah.
But very few. Normally will be like if its deal is less than 75, our inside sales will do it.
Yeah.
And if the deal is bigger than that, it's a bigger opportunity than that, then our field sales will do it.
Got it.
And many times we'll pair them up. That there was a pairing of an inside rep and a field rep who will do together after a territory. Got it.
So one other question on this. So sounds like you knocked it out of the park on your VP of sales. So you're ahead of over 70% of folks here. Because our unscientific survey is that 70% of your first VPs of sales don't make it 6 months. When you're hyperscaling, what are some of the hires that you made that were wrong? Like what were some of the, so you made the Splunk thing work. Any mistakes that you learned? Did figuring out how to hire a VP of product not work out, or was marketing a challenge?
Yeah, not all hires go right. Like,
Not all right, yeah.
I would say like about 7 out of 10 or 6 out of 10 is probably the right hit rate.
Right hit
I don't
rate?
think 10 out of 10 would go right on hires on execs. I think it's impossible.
But no big one you learn, one big mistake?
Sometimes what happens is like, some people are good at a certain stage, but they're not good at a different stage, right? So
Yeah.
that also happens. Like, it's not that they didn't work out right then, but they...
Well, that's a hypergrowth topic. How far, when you're in a hypergrowth mode, how far does the executive have to scale? Because it's hard to scale from 1 to 300.
Yep.
So what are your learnings? Like, do they have to scale 18 months, or do you hope they scale, or?
It's an interesting question. The way I always started to look at it, like, that instead of asking the question like how far someone scales, like what does it mean, right? What are the skills required, right?
Yes.
So like say we know that we're going to the next level. What do they lack? Do they lack ability to inspire a larger number of people? Do they lack the amount of planning or strategic thinking that needed for the larger role?
Yeah.
They're not good at hiring or delegating? What are they lacking that would stop them for the next level? And then I would ask, like, okay, can this be coached? Can they be coached on it? If sometimes you can't coach someone because that's how they are.
Yeah.
So it's and that's how they've operated, or that's their personality for say 20 years.
A lot of
You
people
can't
don't want
coach
to be
it.
coached, yeah.
So then you have to like, okay, if based on we need this skill and this skill cannot be coached, so we have to make a change.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's it could be coached, but you may not be able to afford the time to coach. Right? You are like, okay, if it'll take a year to coach and we don't have a year, or this person is in such a critical role that we don't have a year, we have to make a change.
Yeah.
So it's a hard question. The hardest question is like when things are going well in hypergrowth, and you have to bring someone for the next level of skills.
Yeah, it is hard. Did you get any coaching or mentors or folks that helped you scale? Did you find anyone great to help?
It's unfortunately I couldn't
I was
find
bad
like
at
one. Yeah, I couldn't find like one coach. I wished I had like one mentor or one coach like that.
Yeah.
So I would go and talk to a whole bunch of people. You read and study and you talk to a whole bunch of people, and especially the way I learned is like it's best to pick a topic.
Yeah.
And see like, okay, who can you talk to about this particular topic, right? So if a topic is like, we are figuring out we are going to expand internationally. How should we think about our international expansion strategy? And then I go and will talk to try to find like 7 or 8 different people. And if you talk to like 8 different people who have done that, you start getting like a good idea on what's
7 or 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's if you talk to like 1 or 2, you still may not know like what's even though they have been successful in their role somewhere.
Yeah.
It may still be a wrong
It's not enough.
approach.
You always have to push yourself to do more of those meetings. Yeah. On that topic, just because of our audience, any interesting lessons on that going international? Did you do it too early, too late? Did you staff it wrong?
No, I think I would say for most software companies, it's international expansion these days is easier because of SaaS and online.
Sometimes it's organic.
Online
Sometimes
delivery,
the
it's
customer's
organic.
just,
Yes.
you can buy software anywhere, right?
Yeah, and that's the test we had. Like if we are seeing free downloads coming from a country, that means that country has demand for our stuff. So let's go and do after it. The advice I would give though is like pick the biggest countries and the biggest geographies. It's like if you have to go to Europe, pick the top 3: UK, Germany, and France, and start with that.
Yeah.
Don't go after like every country in Europe initially until you nail the bigger economies. Same thing in Asia. If you're going in Asia, try to nail the easier and bigger economies, and then you expand from there. That's otherwise it takes too much resources and.
It's the same amount of resource no matter what the market is, right? So good. So I know we kind of blew through time. Any high-level thoughts? What kind of advice can you give, especially to the 2,000 folks from other countries? What's some Zen thoughts for us on the journey to 3.7 billion?
I think my advice is simple. Like you can't plan it all. But you have to, do it one step at a time, one milestone at a time. Have the plan at a high level, but then focus on how do we achieve this next major hurdle. That if your hurdle is that you need to go and nail the first set of customers and some vertical, or you need to go and expand into this country, or you need to raise this capital, you have to find a way to nail that hurdle, and you keep doing it. You get
Break
next
it up
hurdle and
into
next hurdle,
hurdles
and
and pieces,
Yeah.
right? Otherwise, it can be overwhelming.
it's
Can
pretty
it?
overwhelming, right? You just go after like one hurdle at a time, and you keep
Yeah.
building on it.
Well, last question on that. I know we're over, but when did you know AppDynamics was going to make it? When did you feel? What would it feel like at the moment when hypergrowth hit? Did you know it? What was that switch that happened when you knew the company was going to be a big hit?
I think the first 18 months was kind of it was hard. Like we didn't know if people are gonna buy our product. We were going through pivots and transformation of what we are gonna be in. So that was hard. But once we got the product out, and I could see like customers were happy and excited. So that to me was I knew we could do it.
Yeah.
I remember like we were about at that time $1 billion valuation or unicorn was very rare.
That's why they called them unicorns.
Yes.
Remember? That
Now
was
it's
the old
like
days.
you have like 150 of them, right?
Yeah.
So in 2010, when we launched the product, I said, hey, we're going to be a $1 billion company. And we were like 12 people in the company. And people were like, what are you talking about? So, hey, look, our product, people like our product. We're going to be a $1 billion company. Let's set that as our goal.
Yeah.
And what I also learned is like, sometimes if you set a goal and some kind of a path, they do become self-fulfilling as well in ways. I'm kind of believer in that. Because if the organization starts to believe in it, and you have like, smart people in your organization, they start figuring out a way to get there.
They do.
Like,
right.
So it's like I remember like in 2010, when said we're gonna be a $1 billion value company, and
With 12 people.
With 12 people, and
12
people were like, "Are you crazy? This doesn't." But then I repeated it so many times, and we will. So okay, this is how we will get there. Likely, like a $1 billion valuation is about $150 million of revenue growing fast, right? So how are we going in for a B2B company? So how we will say, okay, this is how we go to $150 million, and people start seeing it.
Yeah.
But the best thing was like I didn't need to tell them every detail. Like once people believe that we can go there, they started figuring out. They will say, hey, we have this problem. If we don't solve this now, 2 years from now, we can't get there. And the organization just starts to do it. It's kind of crazy how once the organization believes in that goal, they start to figure out ways to get there.
That's the key. If you set the goal too low, you're going to align to that low goal, right? That's great. All right, let's all do that. Let's give it up for Jyoti. This is an amazing story. So thanks, everyone. Super cool. Thanks for doing this. This is great.